Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
And I am Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Ooh, things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields,
we're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get the one that we know of, so you'd better make the most of it.
Amen. Guys.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, just chilling.
I am still on cloud nine from our meetup.
Oh.
Yes. And you know what's funny? We've gotten a few emails that I think people maybe misunderstood the date or something, and so I had to tell them, I'm sorry, it was last week, and they were just shattered. That was so crazy fun.
Yeah, thanks everyone who joined in. Honestly, it's the most fun I have had since this darkness descended upon the land.
I don't know that it's nice to call my presence darkness on the land,
but it was just so cool to see everybody's faces and to have everybody participate. And, we had our friends, we had Taro in Finland and Paul in Singapore, and we had our friends in Australia, we had friends in New Zealand, all over the U.S. It was so great. People got out of bed in the middle of the night.
And it turns out that pretty much everybody in the great state of Pennsylvania is a fan of the show.
That's true.
We kind of Pennsylvania jammed the lines. I don't know what was going on, but you guys cleaned up. So it was fantastic. We love to see your beautiful faces and your beautiful kids' faces and your beautiful pets' faces. It was a good shot in the arm as we all wait around for an actual shot in the arm, right?
Right.
So
and we'll do another one. I'm convinced that we'll do another one. We haven't decided on a date and time yet, but if you want to be a part of it, you can already start to. I mean, I assume Uncle Mark didn't throw away all of the email addresses, but send in an email with Zoom in the subject line, and we'll make sure you're.
Well, you know
don't
what?
miss the next one.
I don't go crazy trying to keep track. Why don't we just wait until we announce a date and then
rude?
Yeah, it makes it easier. You can still send the word Zoom to me. It's fine, but.
If you want feedback, or if you have feedback for us, just please understand, Uncle Doug will not be the pilot of the plane next time, so you can leave that feedback out of your complaint.
To all the people who were allowed in after the halftime show, someone else will be driving the ship next time. But it was awesome. Thank you. We loved you. It was great. And
all of this is just to say, if you missed it, you should feel left out.
Yeah, truly.
You should just jump out a window. So we have a fun show this week. Doug, you're going to introduce us to nobody, really.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce us to what was once one of the world's great religions and now is no more, the Manicheans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I am going to talk to us all about our eating problem.
Yes.
And how to fix it.
And then I am going to have part 2 of our interview with Jared Yates Sexton, the author and journalist, who is going to tell us the good news about theocracy in America. So just be ready for some happy talk.
Shouldn't take long.
Yeah. And then, other shit's happening. Our YouTube channel is populating. We're over there at How To Heretic. Our friend Vern has broken the show into... Well, we broke the show, but he's broken it into segments. So if you have a relative that you think or a friend might benefit from one of the individual segments, go ahead and send it to him that way. And then, guys, don't forget the merch. Part of our meetup was a fun game, a guessing game, a visual game, great for a podcast, about guessing some images from a poster I've created of some of our favorite segments.
You got to see this poster. It's actually... amazing. Uncle Mark, you did a beautiful job.
Thank you.
Doodling all of the best of our segments. It's all the super fans should go and check it out, and just you can go through and you'll recognize a bunch of them. Some of them are harder than others, so see how well you can do with figuring out what each of the things is.
Yeah, it's super fun. You can find it at our merch store. And I thought the game was going to be harder, but Hiram, our friend in Montreal, that dude mopped the floor with me. that he was so good. He knew everything. Yeah. So maybe they're not as hard as I thought they were.
Most of the people who participated in that quiz were pretty fucking spot on.
I was only
impressed.
got like 3 out of 20, and several of the ones I didn't get were my segments.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so check it out. It's super fun, and I think it's also on some other stuff. It's on blankets. It's on notebooks. So all it makes is sense.
We should get some blankets.
You should get some blankets to settle in. So
yeah.
With that, guys, enjoy the show, and see you on the other side.
Woohoo!
Uncle Dan.
Hello. Yes. Question.
There's that old saying that everything old is new again,
including that saying.
And I think it's 50% completely true and 50% utter bullshit. And I think it's because both sides, right? And so I want to see if Uncle Doug can prove one of those two suppositions I've just created in a certain singularity.
I am up to the challenge. So.
Wow. Great.
Well, dear uncles, we often talk about on this show about how history is crowded with dead gods and the religions they represented.
Sure.
And how about in our world seemingly dominated by only a handful of major religions, there's an abundance of tiny sects, both ancient and new, in often surprising places. Today's subject, however, is about a major religion that through concerted effort by pretty much everybody is no longer with us, but that once stretched
Scientology.
I wish.
It's on death's door, but it's still here.
This religion once stretched from the Atlantic coast of France to the Pacific coast of China, from North Africa to the Central Asian steppe. It was
That's
pretty
not
much
small. That's a large bit of land.
Teeny tiny.
Yeah, it's a huge tract of land.
It was pretty much present at every major inflection point from the 3rd to the 13th centuries. And if any one of 1,000 events had played out just a little bit differently, world history would have played out very differently as well. I guess that's true of pretty much anything in history, right?
You're talking about the religious butterfly effect.
Right. However, that's not what happened, and by the 14th century, one of the world's greatest religions died alone and lonely in China. So today let's talk about the rise and fall of Manicheism. Pronouncement disclaimer, I'm going to say a bunch of words from Persian Manicheism to ancient Jewish Gnosticism, to Tibetan Buddhism, to Mongolian shamanism, and I'm going to say them wrong. Unless you are in fact an ancient Gnostic Jew or a 13th century Mongol raider, leave me alone.
And also, just leave me alone.
Just leave me alone.
And if you're not one of those, also please leave me alone.
Right.
So Manicheism is based on the extensive teachings of one man, Mani.
Oh,
I know.
Really?
Yeah, just one dude named Manny, and that's the whole name of the religion.
Manny down at the tire shop.
Exactly, you know Manny.
Yeah. Oh, sure. He's
Victor's,
great.
Victor's brother.
Yeah.
That guy, he will change your flat in no time, and he will start a religion without you even batting an eye.
Like 10,000 years ago. He's amazing.
God, this is such a tangent, but you just got me thinking about there's a place in Salt Lake called Victor's Tire Shop.
Yeah.
That is a literal like Mexican tire shop with a little taqueria, and you can order the tacos where you like get your where you pay for your tires,
and it's really good.
The tacos are so good. I'm so desperate for that place to get back open so I can go visit.
That's really good.
How are the tires?
Tires are mediocre,
a little salty.
Manichaeism was based on the. Pardon me. Let me back up. Mani was a Persian born in 216. Seleucia Ctesiphon in modern-day Iraq. His parents were members of a small Jewish Christian Gnostic sect called either Elkasiites or Elsasiites, not sure which.
Okay.
Many believed that Gautama Buddha, Krishna, Zoroaster, and Jesus were all divine, but their teachings were incomplete. He believed in the life of Jesus, especially because if it actually happened, he was just stone's throw away and only a couple centuries late. But he believed that most of the story was mystical rather than literal. His main theological preoccupation was the problem of evil. His theology would become strongly dualistic, teaching that the universe was in a war between good and evil, light and dark, that God was good but not totally omnipotent, and that he was opposed by a nearly equal power of darkness or the devil. This battle raged all around us and within us. Flesh was not intrinsically evil, but possessed by portions of the light or portions of the dark. This cosmic struggle that raged around us manifested itself in violent weather and natural disasters.
Was Jesus' last name in this theology Skywalker? Because I'm starting to hear similarities.
No, it's kind of funny because it's not that far off.
Tomorrow is May 4th, guys.
That's true.
Yeah.
Manny wrote at least 7 books in several languages, including a later variety of Aramaic called Syriac and a Middle Persian language called Pahlavi. See above disclaimer. These books made it the very complicated cosmogony of Manicheism, which reads more like an ancient Middle Eastern Game of Thrones. Nothing but fragments of the original work exist, and what we know is based on either other accounts or oral traditions. However, like I said, it borrowed heavily from all of the major and minor religions of its place and time. There was an extensive creation story with wars and betrayal and drama, all of it predating the creation of Adam and Eve. The spirit of Jesus himself was sent to awaken Adam and teach him about the light and the dark. So there's your Jesus Skywalker. I guess maybe Jesus Kenobi. It's very dense, and like all mythology, it's a complete mess. But the gist of it is that this reality wasn't necessarily created on purpose, and it wasn't created by God, who now wages a universe-wide war with the forces of darkness that we must also wage within ourselves. The ending is not written, and we are the masters of our own fate. This notion...
Okay, this is a clear improvement on the monotheism of the time.
You could call it that. I mean, and as we'll see, it's not without its problems, but it is an interesting way to deal with the problem of evil, right? Instead of an all-powerful, knowing God, then we have to square the circle of why there's plagues.
Right.
We have a God in a pitched battle, a good God in a pitched battle with evil, which is why good and bad things happen. Well, there's that.
So it's like deism a little bit.
It's kind of deistic, yep.
Yeah.
And I am pleased to understand I am only scratching the surface of this religion. This notion that man can elevate himself and then the dualistic nature of the faith would prove to be its undoing, as it tried through battle with more fatalistic authoritarian religions throughout history. The Manichaean church was very highly organized. It was divided into 2 main groups, the elect, or clergy, and the hearers, or the lay people. The elect was led by a supreme type leader with 12 apostles, 72 bishops, and 360 presbyters. The elect were forbidden from drinking alcohol and eating meat and could not harvest crops or prepare food. Harvesting was considered murder of plants, so the hearers would harvest and prepare the food for the elect, who would then in turn forgive them for that very act.
Oh, my God.
As with every religion in history.
Getting a little intense there.
Yeah, it quite literally pays to be on the payroll. So, they had a very complex set of rituals. The hearers had to pray 4 times a day, while the elect had to pray 7 times a day. During the prayers, they would do 12 burpees. Kind of not kidding. They had to prostrate. 12 times during their prayers, they had to prostrate themselves and then get back up.
So it was kind of like the Islamic.
Get all the way
it
upright.
Was CrossFit.
All the way upright. Yeah. Yeah, it's totally CrossFit. During the day, they would face the sun. At night, they would face the moon. And if the moon were not visible, they would face north when they prayed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Why not? Manichaeism, like Christianity, was
People
an evangelistic...
just want a direction. Just pick a direction. They don't really care.
Now, we have every direction but south now. Manichaeism, like Christianity, was an evangelistic faith, and Mani and his early followers worked very hard to sell their new religion, and they did so with remarkable speed. Within a few short years, it had spread to Rome and Western Europe, and was a strong influence when in 312 Constantine converted to Christianity. Here's one of the many points in the story where there is at least the possibility that the world could have rolled out very differently had one tiny thing been altered. It seems that Christianity was more of a presence in Rome, in the Roman Empire in 312, but Manichaeism was definitely the flavor of the month. Had Constantine decided that Manichaeism suited his strategic needs more than Christianity, it's impossible to contemplate how different our modern world would be. But alas...
I think you mean had the Lord not told Constantine the truth about Jesus.
Correction accepted.
Okay.
Yeah. But alas, he didn't, and Manichaeism would begin to contend with the violent forces that would, over the next 10 centuries, extinguish it from the face of the earth. Mani was the first to suffer this fate when he ran afoul of Zoroastrian clergy in Persia and was put to death in 276 or 277. In the late 3rd century, Christians would spin a tale of Emperor Diocletian uniquely persecuting Christians by throwing them to lions and setting them on fire. It appears that these accounts have been at least exaggerated.
Yeah, we've talked about him on the show quite a bit before. Yeah,
Or
the Diocletian terror.
yeah, it's possible that these stories were actually conflated with the Manicheans, towards whom Diocletian lived up to his legend. In 296, Diocletian decreed that all Manichean leaders be burnt alive on piles of their own scriptures.
Whoa!
Wow,
Yeah, that's something, isn't it?
that's gilding the lily, man. Just
Right?
yeah.
Just kill him. You don't have to get all flowery about it.
Okay, I get it. You're proving your point.
You want to burn the books, you want to burn the people.
Right.
Can it be both?
After years of persecution, the moment that Christians got some power, they immediately demanded that the Roman Emperor Theodosius I strip Manichaeans of their civil rights, which he happily did. But Theodosius didn't stop there, and by 382, he issued a decree for the death of all Manichaean priests.
Jesus.
Fun fact, St. Augustine of Hippo spent 10 years as a Manichaean before converting to Christianity in 387.
Interesting. What?
Yeah.
Augustine.
St. Augustine was a Manichaean before converting directly to Christianity. And this was at least convenient, as Theodosius had issued his death warrant only a few years earlier and would go on to declare Christianity the only religion of Rome in 391, just a couple years later. So it is thought, therefore, by some that Augustine's conversion was not as sincere as he made it out to be. And although he became a strong enemy of Manichaeism, it seems as though he injected a ton of Manichaean teachings into the early Christian church. So it's a little bit dense to go into here, but the dualism of St. Augustine kind of comes from his Manichaean background.
That's so fascinating because he's one of the kind of the architects of hell, right? He's one of the proponents, early church proponents of hell, and he was just a terrible shitbag in a lot of other ways. So one wonders, if those were, now I have to look into it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
The Roman persecution in that area was so effective that Manichaeism virtually disappeared from Western Europe in the 5th century, and from most of Eastern Europe by the 6th. However, it managed to last for some centuries in several small pockets of Mesopotamia, Africa, Spain, France, northern Italy, and the Balkans before being extinguished. It also did quite well in the Uyghur region of Central Asia, with Khagan Boku Tekin, the leader of the Uyghur Khaganate, joining the religion, effectively making it the state religion until the fall of the Khaganate in 840. So it was a massive influence in Central Asia. It survived for a short...
It's easy to make up words, Doug.
No, it's not. Think like read the Book of Mormon. You can't make up those names.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point.
It can't be done. It's like literally not a possible thing.
Manichaeism did survive alongside the booming new religion of Islam for a time, especially since they shared a geographic point of origin. However, Islam decided to earn its reputation for not getting along with other religions early on, and concerted efforts were undertaken in the Islamic world to stomp out Manichaeism as early as 780. But for a short time, during the life of Muhammad and directly after his death, Manichaeism had a chance to hold off its new regional competitor, but Islam was designed for conquest and Manichaeism was not. It had its day in Tibet in the 8th and 9th centuries before being uprooted and fully replaced by Tibetan Buddhism, and it survived in the Central Asian steppes until the Mongol invasions of the 13th century. And although Genghis Khan was crazy tolerant of religious freedom, Manichaeism did not flourish under the Mongols. It appears as though it made its last stand in China until it was officially banned by the Ming Dynasty in 1370. And
these guys, they can't catch a fucking break.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And that was that for one of the world's largest religions, as it seems that Mani had set out to design a religion that borrowed heavily from all religions around it in order to please all those religions. He succeeded in creating a religion that nobody wanted. As it became associated with idolatry and dualism, some people were accused of being Manichaeans and burned for it during the Inquisition, although they were almost certainly false charges. The destruction of Manichaeism was so total that only one fully intact Manichaean temple still exists in China, in the whole world. There are several small groups that claim to carry on some part of the Manichaean tradition, but it's become so infused and kind of hard to differentiate from Buddhism that no one can prove them right or wrong. One thing is for certain, Manicheism was one of the largest and most widespread religions in history. It was a viable competitor for every other major religion of the time and those that have survived to ours. Had it managed to fend off the rise of Islam or outpace Chinese Buddhism or find favor with just one Roman emperor or one Khan, we would be living in a very different world. But
interesting.
I'm not going to say it would be a better one. There's nothing really within Manichaeism to make me think it would have been a better alternative to the religions it lost to, but it sure would be different. I'm sure we would still have a podcast, but instead of inveighing against Jehovah or Muhammad or Joseph Smith, we'd probably be bitching about the King of Glory or the 12 Virgins of Light or the Keeper of Splendor.
The Keeper of Splendor. You know, you guys remember that Seinfeld episode where there was like a Pakistani restaurant in the neighborhood, and he went in there, and the guy was struggling, and he's like, you know what you should do? You should serve all cuisines. And so remember that? And then the guy tried to like have Chinese, Pakistani, Mexican, Hawaiian,
right.
And it was just a catastrophe, like even worse.
Right.
And it kind of sounds like what Manny tried to pull off there, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that, and pretty soon it's just a hot mess.
Yeah, and I think one of the only upsides is that apparently through concerted effort, religions can be made to disappear. Just please don't tell anyone with a German accent or a MAGA hat.
Right.
So that's it. The major world religion that is entirely extinct.
I think I remember a revival of it that happened somewhere in the 1980s, though.
I'm sure.
They tried to bring it back with Andrew McCarthy and Kim Cattrall, right? Oh, that's...
I'm totally lost.
Manicheism.
Oh, my God. I'm like, what the fuck are you actually talking about? Well, you know, that we talked about the Zoroastrians a little bit. Same region, right? They came out of Persia and looked like they were going to be it for a while, and now they're down to, I think there's tens of thousands left in the world, but not many more than that. So,
you know, for such an amazingly powerful region and civilization, those Persians didn't make anything stick, did they?
It seems like they had a hard time making shit stick. Oh, well. And then the Muslims showed up, and that stuck. So, yeah. It's pretty sticky right now. Well, that was a fascinating look into our old friends, the Manicheans.
Well, and so interesting because I had never heard of them.
Yeah.
And it seems like it was this was a major thing. This was huge.
Yeah, and whose influence it is in Buddhism, it's in Christianity, it's definitely in Islam. So isn't that wild?
There you go.
And again with Augustine, who knows how because he infused so much of what became, you know, the Catholic Church we know, and Christianity. Hard to say how much of it, you know, it is in that DNA. Fascinating.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Manny.
Right. Let's move on. Let's Manny on.
Uncle Mark.
Yes.
In this time of crisis and virus, one would think that
virus crisis.
Exactly. We'd be sitting in front of a single candle with a can of cream corn. But you know, I'm getting plump. I am not eating. I'm eating very well.
Well, that's A, gross and bourgeois, and B, there should probably be some rules about how and what you eat, Doug.
Yes. Desperate
Dan,
for some rules.
Do you have any rules to impart to Uncle Doug?
No.
Yeah, good.
More crab legs.
Listen, there may be some rules. I think we can talk about them, but before we do, I just want to say this, which is Webster's Dictionary defines the word religion as a system of faith and worship designed to provide adherents with a belief structure and practices that will make them look silly and possibly crazy to outsiders, but keep them psychologically trapped forever.
Mission accomplished.
Direct quote. That was copied and pasted.
Nice.
One of the ways that religions exert control over the lives of their believers is through controlling what they eat and drink.
Mm-hmm.
Listeners may remember 2 weeks ago when Uncle Mark talked to cult expert Stephen Hassan.
Yeah.
Hassan. Stephen Hassan about how cults and religions are so effective at trapping people's brains. How is your cult coming along, by the way, Uncle Mark? Have you decided on a name yet?
Never better. Never better. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Keep it up. It's always good to have a side hustle.
My side hustle right now is I'm struggling with a cat who wants to eat the microphone. So you guys keep talking.
Okay. Well, listen. What stood out to me in Mark's interview was the idea that if you can get a person to change their behavior, their brains will twist themselves in knots trying to justify having acted so strangely.
Right.
It seemed like, to a large extent, the key to getting people to believe whatever you want them to believe was to make them behave in a specific way. Almost doesn't matter what the behavior is as long as it's new and different. So, this new and different behavior creates an us versus them mentality. We, the in-group, are the righteous few who are brave enough to always wear mismatching socks, as our deity commands. They, the out-group, match their socks like filthy little heathens, blah, blah, blah. So, the pitch becomes actually quite easy, which is basically something along the line of, look, you don't have to decide right now if this is true for you or not. Just join us for a few meetings, hear what our charismatic leader has to say, and, it's no big deal, but try mismatching your socks for the next little while. See what that does for you. We'll explain why in session 6. Well, if you make it to session 6, you've been doing the sock thing the whole time. Congratulations! Without even knowing it, you've joined a cult. Call your dad. This trick of making your brain justify your behavior after the fact is a goofy little quirk of human psychology, but it's super effective. And pretty much every effective cult/religious leader figures it out pretty early on. Today, gentlemen, I'm going to talk about one way that religions have created in-group versus out-group mentalities for thousands of years. Boggle tournaments.
Yes.
No. I'm talking about aliment, comestibles, the act of gustation. In the modern vernacular, I am, of course, referring to boggle tournaments. No! Food! Now, we three... gentlemen, grew up in Mormonism, which experimented quite heavily with otherizing behaviors pretty early on. Plural marriage, strange temple rituals cribbed from the Masonic rituals, but whatever. Funny magic underwear, killing apostates, shitting on the darker races, fighting wars against entire states and even the USA. All of these were... And some still are ways that Mormonism differentiated itself from the rest of the world.
Yeah, it's pretty different stuff.
Yeah, I mean, but when you boil it down, the basics of it isn't different. You know what I mean? There's almost nothing to really differentiate it from mainstream Christianity except just a couple of weirdo things, right?
Yeah.
So... even after almost 200 years of chilling the fuck out and trying not to be such major weirdos, Mormons have still have their markers that show them and the world that they are special. The biggest one is their word of wisdom. This is the Mormon rule book of food and drink, and famously includes a prohibition on alcohol, hot drinks, and joy. For more on this, you can check episode 66 and learn all about the word of wisdom.
The word to wisdom.
So, we know what it is. You two and I know what it is to see people eating and drinking perfectly normal things and to know that they are bad, evil people. But Mormons are actually pretty late to the food rules game, and I thought we should talk a bit about some of the other major players. So, interestingly, a lot of the rules that religions developed happened not just to differentiate one group from another, but to show who was important within that group. We all know the rules. We all know about the rules in Jewish kosher eating, for instance. No digging on swine, no mixing meat and dairy, shellfish is ucky, and of course, normal healthy digestion is strictly forbidden.
Right.
But why did these rules develop? You know, I've seen a lot of theories about it. Some Bronze Age Hebrew got sick off a bad oyster and an overzealous rabbi banned it for everyone. Or maybe some king along the way hated pork and everybody else obliged for long enough that it just became their identity as a group. But I'm really interested in another theory, which looks at cleanness versus uncleanness, sort of pollution versus purity of food, which has nothing to do with what is or isn't healthy to eat. As a matter of fact, there's almost no way of determining why the ancients designated one food as polluted and another as delightsome. This, of course, is more just about it's more about just making sure that things are good. Some things are good and some are bad. So yes, of course you can eat a quail, but obviously you can't eat an owl. Squirrel, probably. Weasel, no. The rules are not about the food itself. It's just about having rules. And the really fun part is that the rules applied differently depending on who you were. So ancient Hebrews had what amounted to a caste system. People had higher or lower social rank based entirely on heredity. The family that you were born into determined everything. So the highest class, the priest class, had the most rules imposed on it, but also had some pretty sweet perks. Namely, the best stuff, meaning the good calf or the, quote, first fruits of the trees, were supposed to be sacrificed to God, which is all well and good, but, God never really showed up to take the stuff. So, we're just going to take this back into our priest tent and, don't you worry your pretty little head about what happens to it.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we talked about that in Leviticus, right? It's like, all the finest animals were sacrificed, and then you just kind of leave it there at the temple. Don't worry, we'll take care of it.
We'll clean up. Don't worry.
Yeah.
You guys go ahead. God is pleased with you. Here's a little button and a gold star.
You're good to go.
Of course, when you start using weirdo food laws as part of your religious identity, there's always the potential for things to get weirder. Sure, the Torah has plenty of very specific rules about what you can and can't eat. See Uncle Doug's rundown and way back in episode 9 for more. But through the centuries, the Jewish rules have only gotten more intense, rather. Around the 1st century CE, they started adding rules. Now, not only were there only certain animals that could be eaten, but they had to be slaughtered in very specific ways that aren't mentioned in the Bible. That was all new. Celebrations and holidays started developing specific food and drink traditions, which eventually became more and more like laws. What to eat and drink at Passover, or how a wedding feast was meant to go, etc., etc. Of course, this isn't just a Jewish or a Mormon thing. Lots of religions control what their adherents chow on. Islam drew heavily on Mosaic law when it came to what Muslims were to eat. Things like no pork, nothing with blood in it, no roadkill. But Muhammad needed to separate his Middle Eastern Abrahamic religion from the other ones. So he banned alcohol, which Jews and Christians relied on heavily for their rituals and for, getting bombed out of their skulls.
Getting through the day.
Right?
Yeah.
Just dealing with the shit.
Yeah.
Hindus made rules too. They famously decided somewhere along the way that cows are sacred and that it's a sin to even attempt to keep them out of busy traffic, let alone to eat them. They, too, used and probably still use food as a marker of purity and social status. The caste system, their caste system included very strict rules, not only about who could eat what, but even who could prepare what for whom. So members of the Brahmin caste, which is, again, the priest class, because religion is about power, not holiness, couldn't eat food that had been cooked by someone of a lower caste. A drinking well could be considered polluted forever if someone from a low caste had ever even drawn water from it.
Wow. We've never really done. We need to do the whole caste system as a segment, don't we? Because we've never really.
It's a kettle of fish, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So the highest caste, these Brahmins, their food was to be prepared in the finest way, called paka, while the people of lower castes got inferior food, which, I shit you not, is referred to as kaka.
Lovely.
Because sometimes the gods just favor 12-year-old Dan instead of 42-year-old Dan. There's a whole system of prestige surrounding who will eat what from whom. Giving food to someone else meant that you were ranked higher than whoever was receiving. Refusing food from someone is a great way to tell them that you think you're higher on the chain than they are. All of this amounts to a fantastic way to discourage house guests and not have your Netflix binge interrupted. Different forms of Buddhists have developed different rules. Native American tribes have all had various fascinating pre- and proscriptions about food. African traditional religions, island superstitions, Jim Jones, David Koresh, they all used food as a way of getting their followers to feel special or different. And that difference locked their brains into beliefs, and that's how you win. So, to this day, it's funny because when you hear a lot of people talk about their diet, even if it's not a religious prescription, I think it starts to sound religious awful quick.
For sure.
Like a vegan or a paleo or a keto or a South Beach. We know who you people are.
Yeah, exactly. I eat based on my blood type, blah, blah, blah. It becomes this thing of I've converted to something.
I personally am on the Henry VIII diet right now. And
there's so many turkey leg bones all over the house. It's crazy.
The number of pot pies is outrageous.
Well, and I don't know if you're going to get to this, Dan, but another part of the whole control around food and behavior modification and everything, of course, is no food at all. Right? Is fasting.
Right. That's absolutely the case, yeah.
Yeah, and Mormons have, I think they've done 2 or 3 big fasts so far to stop the coronavirus, so I'm hopeful the third one's going to work.
Well, clearly it works because the curve is flattening, so there you go. And Uncle Doug is fattening. No, I mean, fasting is an interesting thing. That also has happened in many different traditions. There are certain Native American tribes that used to start their children on fasts really early on, like 1 to 2 day fasts, to build them up to a full week during which they would be visited by some spirit animal or spirit guide, which if you've been fasting for a week, guess what? Something crazy is going to visit you.
If I don't eat lunch by 1:30, everybody looks like a fucking turkey leg to me. So I understand the hunger hallucinations completely. Yeah. And then, of course, there's Ramadan, right? Which is a long-term intermittent fast, which I don't know how the fuck anybody can pull off. That's crazy to me. No food or water.
Till sundown.
Yeah, during the daylight hours. So that's
that it's a true fact that many Muslims gain weight during Ramadan
because they binge so much after dark.
The binges are so intense. Yeah.
Well, and then they go straight to bed as opposed to like eating and working off those calories. I'm sure their body goes into some crazy mode.
I was working with a guy, an active Muslim guy on a movie years ago during Ramadan, and it was so miserable. He was a nice guy, but he was such an asshole during the day. Just, because we'd all go to lunch and he just either wouldn't go or he'd sit there and watch us eat. And torture. That's devotion, I suppose. I didn't ever see him break it. So.
Well, and that's the kind of thing we're talking about, right? He's sitting there torturing himself, and far from that making him less likely to want to be a Muslim, it solidifies his identity as that thing and makes it so that he is even more sort of deeply embedded into it in his own brain.
It gave him a very powerful identity in the group, right?
Exactly.
It was very clear what he was doing and that this was a very devotional thing. And so, fasting's a whole other part of that, the control mechanism.
Yep. Eating, not eating, weird stuff, whatever it is, it's all there to make sure that your brain is permanently locked in a belief system that doesn't make any sense.
And that's why I am starting the Church of Spam.
Yes, indeed.
Right.
I think the Monty Python guys beat you to it, but
I'll write him a letter.
Yeah, work with them.
All right,
anyway,
cool.
that's it. That's all. That's all I got. So for that, I just wanted to sort of talk about the concept because I thought, the whole. I really was fascinated by your interview with Stephen Hassan and just thought, oh yeah, this all makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, he's a brilliant guy, and like you were saying about the paleo and everything, he definitely kind of lists those as cult-like behaviors, like CrossFit and not, I'm sure we have plenty of people who eat paleo listening to the show and are in CrossFit. I'm not saying you're necessarily in a cult, but just take a minute and look around. That's all I'm saying.
Well, what's that joke? A Scientologist, a Mormon, and a CrossFit person all walked into a bar. I know because they all told me right away.
Right. Yeah.
Except the Mormon. All right, cool. With that, let's move on.
Gentlemen.
Hi.
Hi, friends. Look, we're just spewing stuff out into the universe, and sometimes the universe spews back. And how great is that?
Yeah.
We do have patrons. People, here's the thing. Our show's free. That's fine. If you just want to listen and that's the extent of the interaction, great. We have no problem with that. We have no truck with that. However, some people love it so much that they want to kick in a little bit of a few pennies here and there so that they can feel like they've contributed. And boy, do we want to thank them. So let me just launch in with the thanks here. Thanks so much to Thomas, to Sith Lord Sexy Pants, Andrew, Master Debater, I'm sure you are, Melinda, Marissa, Aaron. Oh, nope, I'm not going to thank Aaron yet because one of you is going to thank Aaron. Hang on. Marcus and Charlotte, Sheila.
Damn.
Thanks to Nathan. It's still going, guys. Wow. Don't even sweat it. Thanks to Pedro and Catherine and Tim.
Sheesh.
Amazing.
Wow.
You guys, amazing. But we're not done yet because Uncle Mark,
yeah,
I need you to improvise, please, a saint for Kate.
Oh, excellent, Kate. Well, this one is an easy one because I'm feeling your vibe very strongly, and I think that you need the intercession of Saint Tabitha of the Onions. And she's actually not the patron saint of onions, strangely enough, but she's the patron saint of goiters and goiter hobbyists and Herb Alpert, but not the Tijuana Brass. That's a huge, long story we don't want to get into here. It's really more stupid than it's just long. So congratulations on that, on St. Tabitha of the Onions. Yeah.
Amazing. And Uncle Doug, I'm going to let you bestow a patron saint upon Aaron.
Aaron, okay. Aaron, you are going to need the blessings of Saint Slardabart anyone who can write in and tell me what that reference is and how I changed it, you'll win a prize.
I can just say it now.
Saint Slardabart of Billings, Montana.
Or Millings, Montana.
Or Millings, Montana. He can be in two places at once.
Yeah.
Just not very quickly. He is the patron saint of foreign-born water buffalo, the Doppler effect, and all bouillon-based soups.
All right.
That's a heavy hitter. That's a heavy hitter.
That was that saint going over my head. Y'all, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for all of your kindness and your willingness to help out in these darkest of times. You make it light. And look at that. So if anybody else wants to shed some light on the darkness, please feel free to go to howtoheretic.com and find the support us business, the little button there, and then that'll take you to Patreon, and you too can be one of the people that we thank on the show.
Damn, Skippy. And if you can't do that, stars are free. So go there, hit that 5 button. It's 5 or die, bitches. 5 or die.
We love you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Hey, heretics. In case you missed last week, you might want to go back and listen to part 1 of my interview with Jared Yates Sexton, where we talked about theocracy in America, starting with the theocratic Confederate States of America and how that poison continues to infect us. You might want to listen to that before this, which is part 2 of that interview, where we get caught up into the modern age with theocracy in America. So enjoy. I think what is baffling to people who did not come from religious backgrounds like we do, Jared, is they can't understand the Christian right in America and this looming theocracy because it seems so fucking incoherent.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That how could these very pious religious people who will scream outside of women's health clinics then turn around and support a person who is the 7 deadly sins made flesh for president, right?
Right. And what you end up finding out is that it's all malleable ideology, right?
Right.
It's their ability to weaponize what they say they believe against other people. It's the exact same way that the Trump administration uses the law, right? The law doesn't apply to them. It applies to other people. All of a sudden, the law is there to rein in other people and control other people. It's here for me as a tool to use. And I didn't understand the full scope of it because I knew there was something about the hypocrisy of the church that led to it supporting Donald Trump. And for a while, I just thought it was a Jimmy Swaggart type thing, right? Like, you know, the big hair, the suits, the boisterousness, the open sins. Because Trump, when you really look at him, is a televangelist. That's who he is.
Yeah, he's a tacky fucking carnival barker.
He's a disgusting, just greasy person who bilks everybody out of their money for power. So then I started going back for this book, and I didn't expected to go down this route. Again, I started at the very beginning of American history, and I just kept finding these bizarre things that really shocked me, right?
Yeah.
That made American history a lot more obvious. And that history, the one that I found for the book, American Rule, I actually found that this history is the accurate history as opposed to American history, which is a propaganda tool. It's a weapon.
Sure.
And so when I got
that must always preserve American and white innocence,
right? Because it's a cult belief, right?
Yes.
And you go back to what you were saying about the incoherence about the cult belief. The moment that it starts unraveling, it's gone. But you have to continually retroact everything and retro-engineer everything to make it try to become coherent, even though it never even approaches coherency. And I didn't expect to find the cult of the Shining City. But when I did, I have to tell you, man, it messed with my day. Because it was like I did not expect to go into my beliefs or my upbringing and understand them more through this book. I kind of thought that I came from like a weird group of people that
the research took you to a much more personal place than you were expecting.
It was shocking, man. It really, really was. And the thing is, I had this moment. So I have this really, really wonderful editor named Maria. And, Maria is straight-laced and no nonsense. And I wanted this book to be as accurate and good as it could possibly do, because I kind of felt like this was like one of my life's works. And so I called up Maria and I was just like, I have to tell you what I found. And I need somebody outside of this to listen to it. And I was just like, I have to find out, like, does this check out? And then all of a sudden, I started talking about it in public. And the thread that you talked about is like one of the places where I've started to try and give this information out before the book comes out, because September's a long way away.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, I started telling people about this. And people started writing back and they're like, this checks out and checks so many boxes that I didn't even know were boxes. And I started to unravel it, and it was just it's a bizarre thing, but it's absolutely true.
Like, you know what it feels like, and I'm a bit older than you, and I've been paying attention. I read Howard Zinn's People's History quite a while ago, and I was starting to feel like I've got a contrarian view of American history.
Sure,
but what you're describing is it's the frog in the water that's heating up,
right.
But then someone shows the frog a calendar of all the times the temperature's been raised.
And explains water to the frog.
Right. And for the first time ever, the frog is like, oh, holy fuck, this whole thing is a contrivance. Right?
Exactly. And that's the thing that I didn't understand about American history is because for the longest time, and again, because we grew up in the evangelical church, we are implanted with a paranoia, like a constant fear that there are people plotting against us. Right. And that's at the basis of evangelicalism is the idea that you are, even though if you control culture, you are constantly in danger of culture consuming you and destroying you.
Yeah.
And
having been raised Mormon, the story of Utah was that they came here to flee the United States and to live in this mountain fortress, and it is born out of this siege mentality. So it's exactly
and the Christian mentality is all based upon martyrdom, right? And the destruction based under like Roman policy. And it all makes sense when you take that, but then all of a sudden when you start combining it with white supremacy, which has its own paranoia. Right. And one of the things that I have found in all of this is all of the conspiracy theories that we've ever come across, right? The main ones. And these are the ones that, unfortunately, the evangelical church has come to embrace, including, the protocols of the Elders of Zion, New World Order, Deep State, QAnon, all that shit. If you look at it, the conspirators, the ones who are always working with Satan and for the forces of evil, they're always women, people of color, and LGBTQ Americans, and poor people, right?
And Jews.
And
don't
Jews.
Forget the Jews.
Don't forget the Jews either. And
the Jews are the puppet masters behind the whole thing.
Exactly. And by the way, it turns out that they're always accusing Jews of controlling society the way that they control society, which is another thing. I didn't know that about Protocols of the Elders of Zion. But the protocols were actually a plagiarization of a play that was a critique of white supremacist manipulation. They just changed the names. And so what you find in all of these conspiracy theories, those 5 groups that I just mentioned, remember, it's women, people of color, LGBTQ, poor people, and the Jewish people. Those 5 people are that's everybody but white Americans.
Yeah.
Right? It's everybody who would trouble white supremacy. So these conspiracy theories are ways to manipulate people to believe that they are under attack by these other groups. And I didn't understand how we got there. But when I started piecing it together, again, it blew my mind because what ends up happening, and I had no idea about this because we're told that the evangelical right, and now I'm talking about the evangelical right as like the political group. Right?
Yeah.
The group of people who basically took over the culture and fought the culture wars starting in the 1980s.
Yeah.
I'm told, or I was taught, that they started gaining power and purchase based on the abortion debate. Right? Mm-hmm. That's how it's always told, that they that was a step too far. And that was going to be it. That's not true at all. It was actually desegregation. In the 1950s and 1960s.
Yeah, their reaction to the civil rights movement.
It was completely their reaction to the civil rights movement. And so the main figure in all this is Jerry Falwell Sr., by the way, who was a neo-Confederate preacher.
A fucking scumbag. I love what Christopher Hitchens said about him. If you gave him an enema, you could bury him in a shoebox.
I miss Christopher Hitchens.
Don't we miss Hitch?
I'll tell you what, I was just having this conversation with a buddy of mine the other day. What I wouldn't give for Christopher Hitchens and George Carlin to be alive during the Trump presidency. I would, unbelievable.
No doubt.
So, or Hunter Thompson, I'm sure he would have a thing to say about it.
Yeah.
But so you have Jerry Falwell, and he actually was versed in the Confederate preaching that I was just talking about. It didn't go away. Right? He's still preaching that God has drawn, in his own words, that God had drawn a line of distinction between whites and blacks, and that line should never be troubled. And if that line was ever troubled, it was actually troubling the word and belief of a racist God. Right? So all of a sudden, and part of the reason this happens is because Martin Luther King Jr. starts using the social justice gospel of Christ to compel people for the civil rights movement. And it starts actually finding purchase with a large group of Americans, right? Mm-hmm. And because it's compelling, everybody knows that regardless of how you feel about this, the gospel of social justice rings true, right? And all of a sudden, you start
it is one of the redeemable things about the Bible.
Exactly.
I'll try to think of another one, but you keep talking.
Right. No, that's exactly right. I mean, we could be here all day. But, whether you want to get into, whether or not somebody is like a son of God or whether or not a gospel is true, the actual belief behind it, I mean, should short circuit every belief in white supremacy and segregation. Right. And economic manipulation and political domination. So Martin Luther King starts using this, and immediately Falwell and other neo-Confederate preachers, first of all, start calling him a communist, which is what you do. And there's a long history in America where if somebody troubles anything, you call him a communist. The other thing he does is he starts moving towards this white identity, white supremacist, neo-Confederate identity belief that the way that you like, it's actually, again, going back to what we were talking about, it's Old Testament, it's rage and war and smiting
and retribution. Yeah, exactly.
And retribution and
slavery,
right?
Yeah.
And everything that happens in America that is negative. And by the way, people who have heard Pat Robertson, this doesn't sound surprising, right?
Yeah.
Every time there's a hurricane, it's the gays. Right.
Yeah.
Every time that there's an earthquake, it's because, abortion is legal. Yeah. So this God is a different God than the one that somebody like a Martin Luther King is talking about. This God is the God of the Confederacy. And this God is a white supremacist God. And so what ends up happening is you start having things like the prosperity gospel. They start talking about that you can tell God's will. And by the way, if you go back and read Adam Smith, and I feel sorry for you if you haven't already and you have to do this, yeah. Adam Smith says
it's sure.
Oh, it's rough. And on top of that, I'll, you know what? I'm feeling loose. It's a Friday afternoon. Fuck Adam Smith. So, Adam Smith gets out there in 1776 with The Wealth of Nations and is like, this is how capitalism should work. And we should have an entire society based on self-interest. And he starts talking about the invisible hand in the market. Right? There will be an invisible hand that makes things happen. Well, Falwell and the others say, oh, that's God. And if you make a ton of money and you are wealthy and you are powerful, then God is showing that his favor, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, what are the systems of capitalism and law and politics based on? White supremacy, right? So all of a sudden you have, again, a rinsing or a hiding of white supremacy behind the idea of God's favor. And he finds a willing partner in Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so let's talk about good old Ronnie.
Let's talk about Ronnie. That red baiting, horrid, stupid piece of shit.
Just terrible.
Yeah, I wonder if you can agree with me, Jared, that I think the myth of Reagan.
Yep.
Because I'm a person who was old enough to witness it as it was going on, and I was like, what the fuck is going on with this guy? The myth of Reagan is one of the most pernicious myths in modern society, and it's so invasive that even people on the left have been completely drawn into him as this kind of symbol of what Americanness means.
John Kerry yesterday, who is the former standard bearer of the Democratic Party, came out and said, Donald Trump, you need to be more like Kennedy and Reagan. Right? Yeah. You hear Barack Obama praising him. You hear, and by the way, like this is another thing I learned in the book. We don't need to get off on a tangent, but the Democratic Party basically after Reagan was like, we will never defeat the myth of Reagan. We have to incorporate it into our party. Like this thing is such an incredibly toxic myth. I mean,
it's so poisonous.
Oh, it's awful. I wrote a thread about it today that one of the reasons why people continue to say, why doesn't Donald Trump become more presidential is because it created in the presidency the symbol of American exceptionalism. And that's just bullshit. It's an executive position. You either lead or you don't, right?
You're a manager.
You're a manager. So here's the thing about Ronald Reagan. And this was another one of those days. And these were on different days. I didn't even know how they connected. I just thought that Reagan was like a really religious dude that they got in touch with and they decided to work with him. But that's not true. And all of a sudden I had to start looking into somebody like Jimmy Carter that I didn't know enough about, right? And most of the people listening who don't know a lot about history, they're like, oh, Jimmy Carter is a nice ex-president, but he was probably a bad president and blah, 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 blah. Jimmy Carter was kind of an incredible leader who treated the American people like they were adults. And he told them what was going on, and he talked about coming together. He basically gave them secular sermons because he was an incredibly religious guy.
He was a truly deeply pious Christian.
Absolutely.
He still teaches Sunday school when he's not kicking cancer's ass.
Right. I live in Georgia, and all anyone down here will talk about is A, meeting Jimmy Carter at some random function and him being the nicest human being imaginable, and B, Jimmy Carter teaching Sunday school like days after he's been hospitalized, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, just so because we're touching all the bases, let's go ahead and say this. If this country wasn't insane, and if the church wasn't insane, the kind of evangelical that you would deal with in America and in American society and politics would be Jimmy Carter, right? It would be somebody that you could have a conversation with and disagree with. It wouldn't be abusive and toxic and corrosive, right?
Well, yeah, but his particular form of Christianity was not weaponized.
Exactly.
And so the Christian right threw out an actual pious evangelical Christian for an empty-headed, vapid occultist.
And listen, this is the thing that I didn't know, and it blew my fucking mind. There's no other way to put it. It blew my fucking mind, because what I found while I was doing research, because, we've all heard those stories about Nancy Reagan talked to an astrologist and blah, 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 blah. But it turns out Ronald Reagan wasn't actually religious. He was spiritual, and he was heavy, heavy, heavy into the occult. In fact, as president, his chief of staff, I want to say his name was Don Reagan, which is really weird that he had a chief of staff.
I think it was Don Reagan. I think it was Don Reagan.
I'm from Greene County, Indiana. I'm lucky I can tie my shoes. I'll mess around with pronunciations another day. But
I'll spit on you from my glass tower in Salt Lake City.
So beautiful place. So
it is.
Don Reagan writes this book, and he basically sounds the alarm. It's like the modern, tell-all about Trump, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, listen, Ronald Reagan doesn't know what he's doing. He's completely incompetent. And by the way, everyone should know that he's telling state secrets to an astrologer. And like he's telling this astrologer everything about where he's going. He's making meetings based on this stuff.
The Reykjavik, Iceland was picked as the place for the summit with Gorbachev because of the stars.
And he's telling them about negotiations with Russia. So it's like one of these things where, and if you go back, and I found this YouTube video of it there, because there's not much of this that exists in the public record anymore. But there's all this stuff where it's like, man, we really should talk about the fact that he's probably, breaking a lot of laws by doing this stuff. So again, the myth of Reagan's not real, right? And Reagan actually, as an actor, in between informing for the FBI and turning in his fellow actors, and getting them blacklisted for nothing. And by the way, those were usually either women or LGBTQ Americans or actors of color. Isn't that weird how that turns out? Isn't that odd? It's almost like he had a racial.
So many coincidences in this story.
It's very weird. So in between all that, Reagan gets really, really deep in the New Age scene in Hollywood. And he starts talking to mystics. And one of the people who is foremost at the head of this is a guy named Manly P. Hall. And everyone should look this guy up, because this guy is fascinating.
Yeah, I was not aware of him until I read it in your thread. And I was just like, how do I not know about this character?
Oh, spend the weekend with Manly P. Hall. There's YouTube videos of him. There's all kinds of stuff on him. I think I told you earlier, I was like, I kind of want to do a real deep dive on this guy. So Manly P. Hall runs across Reagan, and Manly P. Hall is this mystic who talks about symbols and occultish meaning and lost meanings and lost symbols. And and by the way, it's like he's selling out auditoriums. He has bestsellers. He is a celebrity mystic, right? And so his entire idea and his big opus is called The Secret History of America. And The Secret History of America says that, and by the way, it involves Atlantis, right? I know that's bizarre that a lot of people here who are listening are evangelicals who are like, how did Atlantis end up in all this stuff? And why did we always talk about things like Atlantis? It's Manly P. Hall. So he's talking about Atlantis. He's talking about the Illuminati, all these secret societies that years and centuries ago, what am I talking about, got together. And they decided to carry out God's will. And they were going to create a great society, right? And it was going to be a new society for a new age. And it was going to be God's chosen country to carry out justice and the philosophy of humankind. And that's what the United States was. This is one of the reasons why Ronald Reagan believes in American exceptionalism the way he does. And then on top of it, Manly P. Hall sells Reagan on this idea that America was inspired and saved by an angel appearing at the Declaration of Independence. That and there's this incredible myth, and I'm sorry to ramble on about this, but it's so batshit insane. There's this myth that Manly P. Hall pushes on Reagan that this angel is at the Declaration of Independence, and all of the founders are really terrified to sign the Declaration, and they're not going to, right? Because it could mean death. But this angel shows up and gives this impassioned speech, and then they all sign the Declaration of Independence, and they look, and he's gone.
Dun, dun, dun.
He's just disappeared. Was he ever there? Was that an angel? I think that was an angel. So there's this idea, and Reagan, being what's the word? An idiot, believes that this is true. And he starts dotting all of his speeches with this idea, right? And
you told me that when Reagan spoke at CPAC, that he name checked this guy.
He does. So at the very first CPAC, and for those listening who aren't aware, CPAC is like this major conservative conference where they test out their ideas and then they find their new leaders, all this stuff. It's like
it's the Legion of Doom. Every
Legion
bad thing
of Doom. So
every bad policy that hurts poor people and queer people, etc., that comes out of that room.
It comes out of CPAC. So at the first CPAC, 1974, Ronald Reagan gives an address to CPAC. And by the way, see if this hits anybody. The Shining City on the Hill. Right? Which is the main operating metaphor for the Republican Party and the United States of America since 1980. Right? This is the leading idea that every president has to mention, every politician has to mention, all of it. He mentions it in this speech where he brings up Manly Hall and he brings up this idea that an angel at the Declaration of Independence inspires all of it. Oh, by the way, that whole thing was completely made up, and it's part of a volume of popular fictions written by Edgar Allan Poe's best friend. So there's that. Jeez. And so Reagan gives this speech that defines the next 40 years based on the idea that America is God's chosen country in spiritual warfare with everybody else. Right? So in the 1980s, and I know we can't do this for 3 hours, so we can't talk about all of it. In the 1980s, under Reagan, what happens is there becomes this weird marriage between the evangelical right and their neo-Confederate hyper-capitalistic ideals with Reagan's hyper-capitalism and his occultism. And suddenly
what's crazy is this confluence, and I just am putting this together, this confluence of the neo-Confederate, the white American innocence and power,
right,
and a confluence of this crazy occultist spiritualist Ronald Reagan version of American exceptionalism and power. They combine in the 1980 election,
like a Voltron, exactly, like a Voltron of white supremacy and hypercapitalism.
A non-Christian occultist was the very symbol of America as the anti-occultist satanic panic raged under his watch.
Exactly. So what ends up happening, right, exactly. And so through a confluence of things, and I don't know if you've talked about this on the podcast before, but a couple of people to look into for further stuff here, Francis Schaeffer, who creates a thing called How Then Should We Live, which basically says that liberalism is destroying society. And then you have Hal Lindsey with The Late Great Planet Earth, who writes this book that basically takes this new Christian secularism, conservative political movement, and combines it with the Cold War plus New World Order ideology, and basically says we are living in the end times and that America is God's chosen champion. And of course, Ronald Reagan with it. By the way, Ronald Reagan, as an idiot, believes this, brings it up in multiple meetings with people who are just like, what in the hell are we talking about right now? And, so we end up in this weird place in the 1980s, and anyone who lived through it remembers this satanic panic bullshit where, Satan is trying to get to us constantly through, reverse songs, movies. There are satanic sacrifices in every woods in every town. Children
tore through my community.
It
tore through it.
It was a nightmare. And for people who either didn't grow up in the 80s or didn't grow up in these communities, you have no idea how real this was. It was every movie, television show that you watched. My grandmother that I was speaking about, I can't tell you how many books about all this bullshit were in the house and floating around, sermons about spiritual warfare and how we were in the end times.
Yeah, every misfortune that befell my community was somehow tied to it.
Exactly.
My scoutmaster died in a very unfortunate drowning accident, and it was decided that the Satanists took him out because he was onto them.
I mean, it makes total sense, right? When you really, put it together, that's so tragic and awful. It's awful. And when you really look at it, it is a mass hysteria. And, you can look at everything. And when you start looking at it through this lens and you start understanding it's about the marriage of political power and profit, you start realizing certain things, right? Like for those who aren't familiar, there was like this, there's a mass hysteria based around preschools where there was this idea that like every preschool was run by pedophiles who, were abusing children, Satanist pedophiles. Well, the reason why is because preschools blew up because women started going to work and earning money for themselves. Well, you can't have that in a white patriarchal Christian theocracy. Right. Because your child is going to get abused or killed.
A woman's place is in the home.
Exactly. And so all of a sudden you start looking at that. And then all of a sudden going back to what I said, it's like, well, you can't listen to rock and roll because Satan is on there, right? It'll get you. And all of these things are about that paranoia that we've been talking about, that fragility of white supremacy and white control and evangelical control and the paranoia of the religion paired with this, again, bizarre, occultish, Reaganish belief. And then on top of it, we come to this point, and everyone who hears this, I'm sure, will feel it. There is the idea within conservative America that if you are poor and if you are suffering, you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
You deserve it because you have apparently not worked hard enough or been a good enough person. And suddenly our capitalistic society becomes an arbiter of God's will. And that's where we are now.
People are taught to ignore that it is a systemic problem. It is a system that creates immense poverty and immense wealth inequality. But no, it's because you failed.
Exactly.
Right?
And when you look at it through that lens, all of a sudden white identity evangelical support of Donald Trump makes complete sense, right? Because he is a white nationalist. He embodies this idea that only the wealthy are chosen by God. In fact, he went to these churches. He was married by Norman Vincent Peale, the founder of the Power of Positive Thinking prosperity gospel. On top of that, he is their quote unquote warrior against these outside attacks. And, his wealth is proof that God is for him. And he is the hypocrite that they all are. So all of a sudden, Trump isn't that far from them. He's actually one of them. And when you actually compare him to Reagan, and people don't know this, Reagan wasn't up to date on stuff. He didn't like briefings. He wanted his briefings as cartoons. He didn't work that much. He watched too much TV. He lied so much, it became one of the defining personality characteristics by which everybody knew him. And all of a sudden you look at Trump and you're like, oh my God, it's this thing just playing itself out. And it makes all the sense in the world. It's not inexplicable anymore.
So to sum up, I think what you're saying is that although the Confederate theocratic states of America lost on the battlefield, they ultimately won the political fight after they were washed in the blood of a dim-witted but opportunistic occultist president named Ronald Reagan and the supply-side corporatist prosperity gospel nightmare of a total federal dysfunction and willful inaction in the face of crisis is the desired result of that nearly 150-year-long game.
Well, I mean, if you want to put it that way, sure. I mean, so I just saw this the other day. My friend and historian Heather Cox Richardson has a new book out called How the South Won the Civil War. And I was just like, yeah, I need to read that. I'm really excited about reading that. But I also think that if you really want a full understanding of this, like you also have to take a look at like Reconstruction and how actually, all these other American lies have added up to this. Because what you're saying is exactly right. The South lost the war, but it won its fight for the identity of America, because after the Civil War, there becomes this new, mutant hybrid America that still has the white supremacy, but it can't be completely out in the open. Right? It has to be hidden behind the veneer of an America washed clean. And in that way, it is so much like what a church is. It has its aspirational ideals and its actual ideals. It's two sets, or, as some people would call it, an open and a closed system. The open system says, oh, yes, this is the land of opportunity and freedom and liberty. And the closed system says, hey, hold on a second, it's ours. And that is how this is operated and how the church is operated for God knows how long.
Well,
yeah, that was tiring.
We could do this. I could talk to you all day, but we better stop there. Fascinating conversation. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And I'm sure our listeners will too. And if they want to find more from you and about you, where can they do that, Jared?
Sure. I blog over at themuckrake.com. I co-host the Muckrake podcast with my good friend, Nick Hauselman. On Twitter, I'm at JY Sexton. And my books are out there in the world.
Yeah, please follow him and pay attention, because, theocracy is kind of what's for dinner these days. So, all right. Well, thanks. Take care, and hope to talk to you again soon, Jared.
Thanks, man.
Well, friends, that's it for this week's show.
Hey, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or if you're St. Augustine of Hippo, you can leave us a voicemail about why you're such a monstrous asshole at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986. You can also tweet me from Hippo. I'm on Twitter at HowToHeretic.
And thanks to our incredible patrons, as always.
And thanks so much to Cody Layton for editing the show.
And thanks to all of you, dear friends, for tuning in.
Bye, friends.
Bye.